So yeah, I've been kind of immersed in the whole sustainable fashion world for the last 2.5, 3 years. And I'm coming back to share what I've seen. Maybe think of me as the adorable little sister of Lewis and Clark, kind of like Skipper. Anyway, any Barbie fans out there? No? Okay. Anyway, so it is this entirely different world, and that's part of what I want to talk about is the fact that right now the fashion world and the sustainability world are not overlapping a whole lot. Not even in the sustainable fashion world, which you would think would be the case. So I'm not really here to present answers. I have a few ideas, but what I'm wanting to do is to share, again, what I've seen out there, and this includes, besides New York, I've been to eco-fashion events up in Vancouver and Seattle and seen operations all over Italy. So I have a lot of now observations to share, but I really need all of you to help figure out what we do now. So that's kind of what this is going to be about. So next slide. Oh, I have a clicker. Wow. And which thing do I click? The shiny one. Ooh, okay. So first, the problem of textiles. A lot of you have some idea of this already. These are actually national statistics, which I can neither read on the screen nor on my notes right now. Let me see here. Then I have to remember. Anyway, so it's a whole lot of textiles, and it's only growing. And in California, and these numbers may be more pertinent to those of us in the room, the Waste Board, or CalRecycle, did a waste characterization study in 2014, so that's the latest data we have, and it showed that 4% of what's still going to landfill is textiles. And in tons, while that may not sound like a lot, in tons, that's 1.25 million tons. So again, a whole lot. And today I'm not going to be talking, by the way, about post-consumer textile recycling. There's a lot going on in that regard, and that's wonderful, but that's not going to be my focus. So here's some of the things going on in fashion, and any one of these could be a whole talk or a whole conference. So I'm not going to be able to delve super deeply into any of them, but I will give you some idea. So the industry is changing rapidly and radically. What we all wear is going to change a lot in the next couple of years. For centuries, we've been making clothes more or less the same way, taking fibers, used to be natural fibers, spinning them into yarn, weaving them into fabrics, or sometimes knitting them, and that's just the way it's been done. But now we can do crazy things like grow textiles, like grow it in a lab. It's crazy. So anyway, there's also 3D printing going on, a lot of that actually being experimented with, and it's kind of now past the R&D stage and onto the runways, and it won't be long, I think, before they're on our backs. So that's an interesting one. And then, of course, there's pre-consumer salvage textiles. There's a lot of repair going on. The reuse and resale market is booming. And then we have this whole DIY phenomenon. So I'm going to talk a little bit about all of those, kind of moving from high-tech to low-tech. So here's some of the things that you can make textiles out of nowadays. Things like algae, bacteria, yeast, spider silk. There's something called cruelty-free leather now, where you can grow leather from cow cells. You don't even need to kill one cow. You just take a few cells, and from then on, you can keep growing leather. It's a little weird, but you can feel good about it if you're a vegan. Maybe. What I've seen so far in terms of samples, it was translucent. It was clear, so that's a little weird, and it was orange. So they're working out the bugs. I guess if you're if you're not out on the in the pasture grazing in the sun, your leather doesn't look like leather. But anyway, and then believe it or not, hagfish slime is going to be huge, or maybe. And that's what you see in that bottom image there. That's hagfish slime. I'm not sure how sustainable that is for the hagfish, but it's something that's being worked on. You can make textiles from casein or milk protein. Coffee grounds, those are spent coffee grounds, so that could mean something interesting for all of us. And fungi, depending on your preference, so mushrooms. And that actually resembles leather as well, so you could make shoes out of mushrooms. Like I said, crazy stuff. So, and a lot of this is happening mostly in labs, but when you start to hear these mostly scientists, it's kind of a combination of scientists and fashion designers and textile chemists talk, it sounds like it could be 1 or 2 years before some of these products are available to us. So, yeah, I mean, I guess in the case of the biotextiles, one of the sort of more obvious ways that that could impact waste is, at least it seems as though they could be composted, and possibly more easily than other natural fibers that have been processed into yarn and so on, bleached and whatnot. So, so that's a pretty interesting area. I'm also wondering, and again, this is a question, not an answer, but wondering on the input side whether things like residential food scraps could become an input for textiles. So it's really something to look at, I think. And so then we also have the whole world, crazy world of, of clickers. I want e-textiles. No, okay. So there's also this whole e-textile phenomenon, or also called smart garments. And these textiles are used for athletic performance quite a bit in the military. In fact, that's usually where they're developed originally. Sometimes just to look cool, like this dress over here. I don't think that sort of belt thing has a real function, but it looks kind of neat if you're at the club dancing. And then there's just sort of this novelty about them. So I'm seeing a lot of that, but I don't hear anybody talking about the fact that now you're combining sometimes organic materials or a biological input with what definitely would be considered a technical input or nutrient in the industrial ecology language. And Michael Braungart, Bill McDonough would call that a monstrous hybrid. Basically, it just means it's going to be a nightmare to deal with at the end of its life. And I believe something like that dress, when she's done with it, is now, hazardous waste, e-waste. So those things might start showing up with your computers, or, at your MRF, or not. And that's probably something to be even more worried about if they're not showing up, because people don't maybe know they're hazardous. Okay, then there's this whole phenomenon of 3D printing going on. And what's kind of cool / scary about this is that it could be a little bit like distributed solar, right? This could be distributed fashion. You have your 3D printer at home. You download a pattern. Maybe you purchase it on iTunes. You print it out from your phone to your 3D printer, and out pops one of these cool little tank tops. Right now, they're not real comfortable. I don't know if you can sit in them. I probably wouldn't want to be one of those models trying out one of the prototypes. But again, this is coming. And just in the 2 years that I've been watching this develop, it's moved miles and miles ahead. So 2 years ago, when I heard a presentation about this, the guys who were working on it said, we have to do a sleeve, we have to do a bodice, we have to do all these pieces separately and put them together. But the only reason is that the 3D printers themselves were not large enough. So somebody I saw today figured out that you can print something that's folded. It was actually a fairly long dress. Prints out folded, you unfold it, and there it is, one piece. No seams, no nothing. Yeah. So there's a lot going on with that. Basically, what you're seeing are these little interlocking pieces. So it's a little bit like a knit, but it's not a knit. It's printed. Oh boy. Okay. So I have one left, or oh, okay, that's exciting. Okay. Well, we're gonna move on then. There's also textiles being made out of recovered fishing nets, tires, post-consumer wool, post-consumer cotton. Yeah. Okay. A lot going on in repair that you've probably heard about. Of course, this is what I'm really interested in with my technical counsel. And I've toured the Eileen Fisher facility up in Seattle. And a lot of what's happening there is just kind of stockpiling until they figure it out. But they also now have paired up with Renewal Workshop, who's taking some of their stuff. Atelier and Repairs does some great stuff in London and in LA, but it's very high end and not a lot of volume. Okay, reuse, resale, huge. I said it already. Pre-consumer textiles. Okay, this is Zero Waste Daniel is what he calls himself. Daniel Silverstein. He's got a design studio in Brooklyn. What's important about him is, that looks like he probably had to come up with a really complex pattern to make that. He didn't. He creates the textile by sewing together scraps from factory floors and then just cuts it like you would. So it looks, I think with the David Bowie sweatshirt, it has to be pre-planned. But anyway, and now he's selling just the bolts, the rolls of fabric. He calls it re-roll. And he'll do that. He'll even make it a closed system. So if a factory sends him their scraps, he'll send them back re-roll made from their scraps. Yeah, he's awesome. Okay, and then Angela Chu is right here in the Bay Area. She's taking pre-consumer textiles from cut and sew shops, factories in San Francisco, making really cute kids' clothes. They have endangered species printed on them. She's thought of everything. Love her. DIY. Okay, so this really started out as a socially focused movement, all about social justice. You probably know about it, about this whole Who Made My Clothes phenomenon that happened after the collapse of Rana Plaza in Bangladesh. And so people are asking on social media, asking their favorite brands, who made my clothes, just to make those supply chains and practices more apparent. But what's come out of that is this I made my clothes movement, which I think is really cool, because you're safe, more or less, if you make your own damn clothes. So, okay. All right, so I don't have time for the rest of the slides, really, but I just want to say these two worlds need to talk to each other. This is the most it's been talked about in this way. So it really has to happen. And for example, microfibers, we're not using that term the same way. We got to start figuring that kind of stuff out. All right? Yeah. Could be a whole conference, I believe. And there's some resources for you, and there's my contact info. All right. Yeah.
So cool, very freaky, distributed, very industrial, both trends happening simultaneously. Yeah. So we'll open it up for questions. We'll start on this side.
That is happening a lot. Yeah, so the question was, is part of this green fashion movement a Made in America movement? And it certainly is, partly just because you can control the production better and what the standards are and so forth. There are certain things that can't be done here. There's actually quite a lot that can't be done here because so many factories have closed. Also, we don't have workers who are capable of operating a lot of machines. Certain machines just don't have the sewing skills, essentially. And there are certain machines that only exist in China and so on. So it's going to be tricky. People just talk about bringing the jobs back. It's not that simple. But, yeah.
One from the middle? Anyone?
Yeah. Oops, sorry. Oh, sure. This one or the contact info? This one, okay. Yeah.
A question here.
Yes, so with all of the travels and adventures that you've kind of seen, my question is geared more towards the dyes. I was in retail for 20 years. So the processes that are used to create these fabrics in the first place,
you're talking about dyes and yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So there is this whole kind of arm or wing of this movement that's all about toxics, and Greenpeace has a big campaign working on that. Also, what are they called? Well, Cradle to Cradle has it has a program called Fashion Plus. That's not right. Something Plus. Anyway, they're working on that. So yeah, that's definitely an aspect of it. Oh, you mean like sorting out potentially toxic stuff, or? Oh, I see. Recycling the chemicals. Yeah, and in some ways that already existed for some synthetics. There are some closed loop systems that are kind of cool. The toxics are still there, but it's, yeah, limited a little bit. Yeah.
Great.